Thursday night at the Government Center. Friday and Saturday. Andy.
Extremely exciting to come back.
With a different topic. Reef has been talking about recreating a pelagic zone and how do you keep pelagic creatures alive in an aquarium setting, and not only alive but healthy. So
keep the roof on the building.
Exactly. So that'll be Thursday night. Andy will be there after the sunset picnic. Friday and Saturday, diving, kayaking, paddleboarding activities in the morning, seminars in the afternoon at the Government Center, and then Saturday night, Friday night here will be the open house, lots of activities, and then Saturday we'll have our For the Love of the Sea dinner.
Thank you. I think it might, she's going to come over if it's not working, so she'll be working. Yes. Okay.
This is a test run.
Yes.
I have an announcement. Light Up Key Largo is still happening this year. We moved it from Thanksgiving weekend to December 4th. That's that big Christmas tree in front of Murray Nelson Center. It's actually already up, and it will be lit up for Reef Fest, but it's lit up on December 4th.
All right.
So from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. on December 4th, which is Saturday, it's open to the public welcome, and it's fantastic for kids. So please come out and support Key Largo and Key Strong.
No, you sure it's not the 2nd of December?
December, whatever Saturday is.
Yeah, it's December 2nd.
2nd.
Yeah.
The Saturday before Reef Fest.
Saturday 2nd. Thank you.
Any other community announcements? Lisa.
History of Diving Museum is having their Immerse Yourself presentation tomorrow night. For divers, it should be really important and interesting because of Jack Fishman from Rainbow Reef Dive Center. He's the marine debris coordinator, and he's already organized over 1,400 pounds of debris that's been brought up, and he's just going to talk about the program, different assessments and ways we can get the community involved, as well as keeping the professionals that are involved in the heavy stuff. And actually, I was looking at your gift shop, and on the Sunday after Thanksgiving, which is the 26th, it's called Museum Store Sunday, but supporting a nonprofit by buying some of those Christmas gifts, whether you go to the Reef store, whether you come to the museum, it's just another way to keep it local, keep it educational, and support your nonprofit. So thank you.
Lisa. Okay, without further ado, we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was nice. Andy is on the Reef Board of Trustees. He's a member of the Board of Trustees. He's been very involved with Reef. He has more than 20 years experience in animal husbandry at several major public aquariums throughout North America. Right now he's the Vice President of Animal Husbandry at the Philip and Patricia Frost Museum in Miami. How many of you have been to that museum?
Thank you.
The rest of you need to visit it. It is state-of-the-art. The design of the aquarium is amazing. And there's nothing like it in the world, right?
It's unique.
It's unique. It is really outstanding. So I urge you to do that. Because of his knowledge of sharks, he's now serves as the shark advisory for the Discovery Channel, and he's been on numerous live appearances on the Today Show, Fox News, USA Today. I won't read them all. But he's been featured in 7 Shark Week productions for the Discovery Channel, and today's presentation was actually one of them,
yes.
Correct? So we're in for a real treat. Andy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Well, Nancy's been trying to get me to do this. Just plugged in, mic's on. Yep. Nancy's been trying to get me to do this for at least 4 years, even back when I was living in Canada. So prior to the Patricia and Phil Frost Museum of Science, I spent 17 years at the National Aquarium, both Baltimore and Washington. Moved to the diving capital of the world, Toronto, Canada, where it's frozen most of the time. And then I was offered a job when it was 40 below zero in Toronto to come check out this amazing aquarium and museum in Miami. And being close to Reef, being an hour from Key Largo, was a natural fit. So, but as Nancy said, I've worked with sharks about 30 years of my life. That inspiration, that passion actually started here in the Florida Keys. My dad worked for NOAA. He was with the Coastal Zone Management Program when the sanctuary was being founded. My introduction to snorkeling and diving was being grabbed by my belt chucked into the ocean at age 4 with a mask and fins on, and at dinner time being yelled at to come out of the water. We were actually snorkeling in Liu Key, saw a 5-foot Caribbean reef shark when I was 5 years old. As you might imagine, that is a life-changing event for a 5-year-old. The traditional route might have been kicking and screaming, walking across water, and to me, I was absolutely mesmerized. So that led to an amazing career working with sharks predominantly, but I got into the public aquarium world. I really like that blend of introducing people to live animals through an acrylic window in places that many of these people are never going to get to experience the ocean. Here in the Keys, it's easy, you go to your backyard, but you'd be amazed, in downtown Miami, we have kids from over town that live 2 minutes from the beach and they've never seen the Atlantic Ocean. To us, that's our connection. How do we get people hooked to animals? How do we get people hooked to habitat so they take the next step, go snorkeling, go diving, become ocean stewards? But my talk tonight is about the search for the salmon shark, also known as 100 Ways to Die in Alaska. There are probably about 1,000 ways to die in Alaska, but I'll just highlight some of the more enjoyable ones. So the salmon shark, has anybody ever heard of this species before?
Yeah.
This is a mackerel shark. It's closely related to great whites, makos, threshers, and very similarly related to the porbeagle shark, which is in the Atlantic. There's very few distinctions between the porbeagle and the salmon shark, other than one lives in the Atlantic and one lives in the Pacific. They grow to a max of about 10 feet, 900 pounds. On average, they're 7 to 9 feet at roughly 500 pounds. So this is like a great white that gets stuffed into a car crusher. It gets fatter and shorter. It's like a bratwurst. Just compress it. These animals are oviviparous, meaning they lay eggs internally. Those eggs hatch inside the mom's womb. And then they actually have, they're oophagous, which means the mother keeps producing unfertilized eggs, and the pups actually feed on unfertilized eggs the whole time in the womb for about 9 to 11 months. They just keep eating eggs, and then they're born live. Despite what you often hear on the Discovery Channel and every other media outlet, the mako shark is not the fastest shark in the ocean. It is the salmon shark. The salmon shark is capable of reaching speeds of 55 miles an hour clocked by the U.S. Navy. They're obviously, as a fish, they're a cold-blooded animal, but they have the ability, by running capillaries through their muscles and through muscle contraction across these capillaries, they're able to raise their core body temperature and blood temperature up 14 degrees Fahrenheit over the water temperature, which, if you're going to live in an environment like Alaska, is a really important thing, which also probably helps them generate this amazing burst of speed. The other really interesting thing with salmon sharks is, if you look at their population, all the males are in Russia and Japan, all the females are in the United States. Maybe they like it that way, and that might be why they get along okay. One lives over on the West Coast, one lives on the East Coast. They meet in Alaska for a few weeks of hanky-panky in the summer over a salmon buffet, and then they part ways. So this is actually one of the tracks of some of the female salmon sharks that they've tracked. There's been a number of researchers, including Alaska DNR, that's done a lot of work with this species. And as you can tell, they almost all moved down to California, and we believe that they actually pup in Southern California.
Is that one individual, or?
No, that's multiple different individuals, and the general trend is they all go south. But they'll often find pups in Southern California.
What's the dots for?
Those are, I think, where the data finally terminated. So how did this all start? Well, we actually did a show back in 2007 called Shark After Dark. This was our film crew, and the guy in the middle in the gray sweatshirt, Travis Swanson, he had pioneered diving with 6-gill sharks in Puget Sound. This is right off downtown Seattle, a huge metropolitan area, and you can dive with 6 gills right there. Alki Beach is probably one of the most popular West Coast shore diving training spots in the world, and at 2 in the morning, if you're out there not drinking and diving instead, you can actually see 6-gill sharks come up. So we had actually worked with the 6-gill sharks. We had a great project with them. We'd set up a cage at night, bait it with rotten salmon, set up cameras to look at the cage, and then once the sharks would show up, we'd go down. An amazing animal to work with. But as we kind of completed this mission, the crew was talking about what's the next show we want to pitch. Travis, the guy in the black in the middle, same guy in the gray, he's from Alaska, and he's been wanting to work with salmon sharks for 10 years. And up until the time that we went there, the only person that we know of that had ever gotten in the water with a salmon shark was Doug Perrine. And he had maybe 2 to 3 images of the animal. There was, but to our knowledge, Alaska. So the crew that we had, myself, the guy in the yellow dry suit is Andy Letourneau. The one in the middle is Marty Snyderman, also on our reef board. Travis, this guy here in the red pants was speaking here about last year this time, Mark Rackley. He's a film maker here in the Florida Keys, as is Ben Sampson on the right. They both live down in Summerlin Key and are avid filmmakers here. And we've done new encounters on the southern part of Alaska, and I don't have a pointer. So most of our team flew into Anchorage and ended up trailering our boats to Whittier, Alaska. For an hour it's eastbound and for an hour it's westbound, and the rest of the time you sit on either end, bored out of your mind. So drove into Whittier, towing to boat ride all the way over to here, which is Port Gravina, which is one of the fjords. Now the salmon sharks have been known in Port Fidalgo, Port Gravina, and around Hitchinbrook Island. That's the only area where the salmon sharks have been found. The rest of our team flew into Anchorage and landed here in Cordova. And again, the crew came all the way across, stayed at our luxury lodge in Gravina. So here's our massive fleet. We had a 20-foot center console and a 17-foot center console to do 140 miles in Prince William Sound with about 1,200 pounds of man and about 4,000 pounds of gear. So these are state boats. They, unlike the Titanic, Doug, it might have been on a research boat where the shark was hooked and then let go. Creative. So we actually designed this 17-foot center console boat, and that became the seat for us to drive around. So the 4,000 pounds of gear, all crammed, had to get crammed in, plus the fuel, way too many cameras, and then all the essentials.
You were over the limit on those trailers. Single axle trailer, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, wasn't my trailer. So we took off. So this is leaving out of Whittier. Just again, so way number 1 to die in Alaska is tow a way too heavy boat with a single trailer axle. Way number 2 is ice and cold. So we basically ran these boats in dry suits, and then the dry suits weren't warm enough, so we put rain gear over them, ski goggles, and we really early on realized that icebergs are something to be treated with a lot of respect. Travis knew this, and luckily he was driving the one boat, but we bowed up to one of the icebergs to get ice blocks and put it in the cooler to keep the beer cold for at least the first day. And we chopped the first block of ice off, then all of a sudden these little bubbles started pouring up, and Travis slammed the boat in reverse just in time for a huge iceberg to calf right up and would have capsized us within 4 hours of our trip starting.
Did it rotate?
No, a whole piece broke off.
And it came up.
So basically under this, on most icebergs, a quarter of the mass is out of the water and 3/4 of the mass is under. So a huge piece broke off and would have turtled us pretty quick. So the luxury 140-mile, 10-hour trips in center consoles with your backs breaking. But, I mean, certainly the scenery in Alaska, if you've never been, it pays off very quickly. So this is probably about an hour into the trip. Humpback whales. I mean, just absolutely majestic. If you ever get a chance to go to Alaska, go. I would say if you can do it in any other fashion besides a cruise ship, do it. You will not see the true Alaska without kind of going off the grid. So this was our Ritz-Carlton for 5 weeks. We shared this spot and about the next square mile with about 100 brown bears and about 50 black bears. So this was actually strategically picked so that when the bears came into camp we could just jump off, hoping it was a high tide. The tidal swing there is crazy.
What was the month?
We were July.
Summer.
Then we set up kind of these are again the 2 boats, and this is Port Gravina, so this runs all the way inland to the creeks where the headwaters are. This is prime salmon area. The salmon run in here to their native creeks and rivers to spawn, but we set up a tethering system. So we basically dropped an anchor out, set a pulley system on the tree so that we could put all of our food in the boats at night. I would not be here if we did not.
So you pulled the boats in?
Pull the boats in every morning, and it certainly beat having to swim out and get them. This is our editing suite.
What was the
They
one
had a big
time?
title for it, too.
48 to 50. So this is where we would dump and download data every night off the cameras. Dive compressor, we could fill at about half the speed of smell.
I like your old snorkel there.
We had water straight from the source, so we actually, all of our drinking water was out of the streams. We'd run it through, camping filters. And then our luxury kitchen, almost 90% of our food came out of a Dutch oven. Andy here was an amazing cook, and a life spent in the Boy Scouts and leading Boy Scouts, he could cook anything in a Dutch oven. Our showers is the PG version. This is probably 37-degree water coming out of the mountains. It would just hurt your head, because 5 weeks you're going to stink. I mean, you got to do something. So this
doesn't look like he could wash much here.
This is the shark cage constructed. So we actually had a flip system on the side of the boat to be able to roll it off. But this is fully constructed. Getting it into the water.
There's big holes in it.
Yeah, we kind of ran out of time. Our safety was less
How much did
important
that
at the
weigh?
time. It was surprisingly light. I mean, that's 2 of us could pick the whole thing up and
It's all
chuck it in.
aluminum?
Yeah, it's all aluminum.
So it was a mere inconvenience for the bigger sharks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is getting it floating in the water, and then we commenced chumming. So we actually went to the salmon rendering plant in Cordova. They ran a huge tube down onto our boat and filled the anchor well with just all the heads and spines and
Oh
everything.
man, but that smelled.
It was delicious. It was really good.
So you didn't have to worry about refrigeration.
With no soap, it comes off your hands great. It's not So the one thing, everybody's like, oh great, we can go to Alaska, we'll eat all the fresh salmon we can get. I don't know if anybody knows what happens to salmon when they're in those waters. They're dying. They're basically zombie fish. If you cut them open, their meat is gray. Once they've gone too far up to the fresh water, their whole body starts shutting down. They go into reproductive mode. So Mark Rackley from the Keys is like, oh yeah, we're gonna eat all the salmon. He's chasing them around with nets, and like, Mark, come on. So to this day, I cannot even smell salmon because of this and everything else. So we chummed and chummed and chummed for probably about 7 days and did not see a single shark. So we had chum from, this is the mouth of Gravina Bay, and we had our chum slick to our campsite, which was about 5 miles away, and all the way to the headwaters of the creeks. You could see the slick of just chumming. And then about day 7, it started raining. And then after we built the ark, it stopped. It rained 9 inches a night, or 9 inches a day for 11 days straight.
Oh man.
And mind you, living in tents,
Cold.
And cold.
on boats, and it was pretty nightmarish. But
Daytime temperature
We
we
got-
got about 60.
yeah, about 60. But we got to see lots of cool stuff like bears. So these are black bears that were right near our tent.
Hope you have a real big lens for that.
This one was actually really close lens. But, these are the brown bears or grizzlies. So for those of you, the same species. If they live on the coast near the salt water, they are brown bears. If they are inland and live near fresh water, they are grizzlies. The only other difference is the Kodiak, which is a geographically isolated subspecies of the brown bear. Amazing wildlife, bald eagles. In one stretch, I think of about 100 yards long, like a football field, I saw 14 bald eagles just hanging out, chilling, eating. Tons of sea otters. Now the great thing is we are probably about 50 miles away from Bly Reef where the Valleys ran aground, so it was really good to see the wildlife making a comeback. The eagles are back, the sea otters are back, and certainly some of the most spectacular landscapes you'll ever see in your life. But the one thing we saw the most of, as I alluded to earlier, is these guys. And this is one that's already, see his skin is literally sloughing off.
Not much left of that.
Wounds, and this is an animal who's been in the fresh water already for probably about a week, and he's making nests and breeding every day, and then this happens. which creates an amazing smell.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
More chum, free chum.
Yeah, I mean, this is a smell that, I mean, so Mark worked on all the shows Jack has. So Mark did all the trait that when I see people throw up, I laugh hysterically, which Mark didn't find very funny at all. So we would spend days upon days up in these creeks, in these high grasses, waiting for bears, because the salmon sharks never showed. We were there for 5 weeks, didn't see a single fin, didn't see a single salmon shark. But we saw a lot of dead salmon.
Bears go after
Lots of bears. No, the bears are really selective. The bears don't touch this. The bears actually, in the middle of the run, they will grab a salmon, pick it up, eat the eggs, and I don't want the rest. That's all they eat. They could care. They're not going to work for their food. They just pick it up.
Because they're in a pasture of plenty.
Yeah. So this grass is about chest height. So this is one of our prime spots. So we actually spent a lot of time up in the wood. You know, we're there with camera gear. We're there on our own dime trying to get this show pitched for Discovery. So we have to film something. We got to get a ton of stock footage. So we got lots of bears. We were in this high grass once, and all of a sudden we see 2 little cubs poke out of the tall grass right on the other side of the creek. And I look at Marty Snyderman and say, "Wow, you've got a really good life, man. I'm going to punch you where it's going to hurt because I'm going to be faster than you are." I got 2 little kids I got to get home to, so Marty, it's been great. You've had a good run. I'm out. But so these 2 little kids come out, and we're like, "Oh crap, here it comes!" And we, all we had was bear spray. There's tons and tons of stories about an aggressive female that's charged up protecting her kids. You can pump a whole 45 into it. You can fill it full of shotgun shells, and nothing's going to happen to it. So we had bear spray. And that's about it, and hopefully one of us was faster than the others. So cubs come out, and like, oh, here it is, we bought the farm, and then all of a sudden this huge mom stands up, sniffs, we're like, oh crap, and then all of a sudden she just swats her kids on the butt, they take off, and she stomps into the woods, and oh, that was the best feeling.
You had that great
Funny story, kind of similar environment to this. Mark and I, this is Mark getting footage of salmon laying their eggs in incredibly warm water, and he rubbed through the booties of his wetsuit, so he was wearing rubber boots over them. So Mark and I actually went to this flooded pond, and we stocked up on Rainier beer and Red Vines licorice when we went to Cordova. So all we had on the boat was Red Vines, and Mark and I went into this pond that was just floating with salmon pieces all over the place. And we wanted to film bears, so we littered the shoreline with Red Vines to see if we could get the bears in there. Incredible sense of smell. And the next thing we know, the boat's pulling up to us, and there's a bunch of people screaming at us. Mark and I had fallen asleep on the shoreline with Red Vines hanging over our cameras. Luckily, our heads were still intact. So that was kind of the most way number, like you have to kind of tread pretty far up. So at the end of the year, the end of this 5-week trip, I got a really good stay at an Airbnb. That was my view for 5 weeks, and it's probably one of the best trips I've ever taken in my whole life, even though we got not a single shark. So
where were the sharks?
it had to do with the rainy season, because we were getting just absolutely hellacious amounts of rain, so we think that threw things off. So then in 2012, somehow with the garbage footage that we got of no sharks and a lot of cool, the same old cast of characters, Travis is not in this photo, but he was with us as our guide, Mark Rackley, myself, Ben Sampson on the left. This guy, I'm not sure what he's doing, and these 2 guys were part of our show, the Shark After Dark. And then this time we decided the guy that's too cool for his jeans in front is a full-fledged paramedic. So we realized that there is a lot of ways to die in Alaska, so we brought a full-fledged paramedic EMT, and the guy sitting down is Chris Fallows. He did all the Air Jaws shows. He's an amazing photographer. He's the one that really pioneered getting the breaching great white sharks on photography. So again, we went back to Port Fidalgo. Again, we stationed ourselves in Whittier Lodge, which luckily brought a much larger vessel. So this is about a 40-foot boat that they came and picked us up from the lodge, and you guys got stuck in the little boats again.
What made you pick those 2 places? Was there
just from historic data, we knew that those 2 fjords, and then Hitchenbrook Island, that one, Hitchenbrook here, on this cove here, and on this end, they would see salmon sharks, the fishermen, quite a bit.
So why did you leave out of Whittier instead of Cordova?
The only way to get to Cordova is by plane or by boat. So these boats were on trailer and based and sold out in Alaska, so we had to get there that way. Okay, well, This was awesome. Stepped foot on terra firma. I was like, yes. This is our dock. Unbelievable tide there. You have about a 20-foot tide, actually 28-foot tide. So unbelievable tidal flow there. Water here is absolutely gin clear. We actually, this is, instead of a Dutch oven, we actually had a nice dining hall. The room back there was actually a full-fledged, recreation room. We actually watched the Olympics in 2012 in the middle of Alaska. Satellites, email. I pretended with my family I didn't have email. Bedroom's not a tent, so I mean, really nice place. And then, at the end of the evening, this is not a bad place, and this is actually 2 o'clock. Out to the races, and let's see if we can get some sharks. This time, we actually brought a Phantom camera. At the time, this was the first year the Phantom camera came out. It shoots incredibly slow shutter speeds, so I think you get like 1,000 frames a second. So they're meant for really high-speed shots. This is the one. If you ever watch on Discovery the shooting show where they actually shoot a bullet out of a rifle and into like a watermelon, you can see it explode really slow. These are the cameras that they use. Really cool technique and great for wildlife photography on these things. They actually back record. So if you see something amazing that happens, you hit the trigger and it goes back 10 seconds, 20 seconds, or 30 seconds, depending on what the preset is. So it's not like you're sitting there waiting for the action and then trying to hit record and going forward. This changed the game in terms of getting amazing animal behaviors because it back records. It's constantly going to a hard drive.
Wow.
Constantly. You hit it. It goes back and saves that last 10 seconds. But the interesting thing is this camera cost $350,000. And a piece of crap housing was basically a garbage can with end caps on it. And that was supposed to keep this $350,000 camera. So this is the first year this camera came out. This was the only housing company that we could get to make a rush job to fit it. Luckily, we had Mark there. This thing almost flooded twice. Again, we went for 5 weeks, so in the middle of a 5-week trip, the last thing you want to go out is your main primary camera. But, we got there, we got settled into the lodge, we did a couple test runs with the camera off the dock, and then day one out. So already we were elated. Now, these guys actually display a really cool behavior. This is Ben Sampson. The salmon sharks spend roughly about 80% of their day in the middle of summer within the first 6 feet. And they do this probably for multiple reasons. Scientists have never figured out what it is. But my take on it, as a shark biologist, they're probably thermal loading. They're really dark skinned, so you get close to the surface, get that high intensity sunlight, help them with that process. And again, the Alaskan days in summertime are a good 18 hours. So they can spend a lot of time. So they just do these big, wide, gentle circles. Doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. You just see them out there doing circles. If you run the boat fast over them, man, they take off like lightning. I mean, you couldn't hit one of these if you tried.
So that's what I was curious about. Are they using countercurrent heat exchange like marine mammals with the reef mirabile? They got the thing going on there? And is that why they can swim 55 miles an hour, or do they need to for salmon?
They need to for salmon.
Salmon swim that? I mean, I know
salmon,
with mako sharks, they're going after,
salmon
really
probably
fast.
top out around 30, 35 probably.
So they need to go that fast for salmon, or is it a byproduct of their
It's probably a little bit of
heat
both.
exchange?
Probably a little bit of both. So there's this bunch of capillaries that move through the muscles,
it's the
and
same
as the
thing.
muscles constrict and contract, instead of shedding the heat to the water, they're taking an internal blast furnace and taking all that heat, not wasting it, and pushing it back into their bloodstream. So these guys do these big circular arcs. The other reason I think these guys spend a lot of time at the surface, you'll see photos that I have later, they're covered in copepods. So obviously most of the year, they're in Southern California. When you're here in Alaska, the top 12 inches is freshwater. There's about 8 inches of murky, brackish water before you get to the fully salt water. And it stripes that way because there's so much fresh water coming off the mountains and coming across the top, and then it's also temperature driven. That the heavy salt water is sitting down on the bottom, it's super cold. Believe it or not, the 38-degree water coming out of the waterfall is a little bit warmer. When it hits, after it's kind of gone down the creeks, it warms up in the sun and it stripes really badly, which is a huge challenge when you're filming these guys, taking photos of these guys. But we had done none of this. We did not know when we jumped in with these guys what the reaction was going to be. We didn't know, is this going to be a mako? Ben, Mark, myself have done a lot of work with makos, and makos will bite anything. That's all they want to do. We didn't know if that's what we were getting into. Would it be a great white, kind of cautious, but could put the hurt on if it wanted to? We had no idea. So we start finding these sharks. We spend hours after hours jumping from shark to shark. We jump in the water, try to swim out into the shark circle. You'd see nothing because you're blinded by this halo cline. And then eventually you kind of see that. Is that something? Is that Mark? And then that's all you'd see. And you're in 4,000 feet of water. There's orca. You have no idea what's down there. It scares the crap out of you, honestly. I'm a shark guy, and I was terrified.
What happened to your cage?
The cage got left after the first year. They
Okay.
said, if we're going to do this, let's go all
Let's
out.
go big.
But eventually they'd start getting closer,
Yeah.
and then really close. But you can see, I mean, these are robust sharks. This, I mean, I could not put my arm around it. I mean, these are massive. So there's a Mark with one going in the background. And then eventually you'd get ones, you know, out of every 10 we'd try, about 2 would be players. They'd come in, they'd want to check you out, they'd want to see what you're doing. They'd get a little closer, a little bit more curious, and then finally, we get the money shot. So for about a year and a half, my only claim to fame is I had the best salmon shark photo in the world until Andy Murch went up there on all the intel we gave him. But this was a pretty darn good photo. So you can see all the copepods on the top. So we think a lot of the reason why they're spending that time in that freshwater is the copepods can't tolerate freshwater. So we think that they might be also for parasite shedding.
Is that what looks like tails coming off?
Yeah, that's what those streamers are.
Okay.
One of the other cool features of the salmon shark, they actually have 2 keels. Their tail, and you'll see in the video, just a really pronounced keel, and that's all designed for speed. These guys are just speed demons. But the trick, you know, all good photos have a story. I did kind of cheat. Here's my story. Mark's at the bottom driving him up.
Hey, what are friends for?
Anything helps,
Was
right?
he free diving or
Yeah, free diving.
Okay.
Whenever you saw him do it, try to tag it.
No, we didn't bring any tagging equipment. We didn't know how they'd react, and a lot of times when you do tag them, they'll leave for a while. And we were so keen on trying to get their behavior down. Again, nobody had worked with these guys. So, but the interesting thing is we tried these later with scuba gear. They didn't like the bubbles. And obviously, if you try to free dive in a dry suit, it's like trying to jam a kid. I mean, it's. I think there's actually some outtakes of them calling me a wounded seal and all kinds of good things. But so, believe it or not, we actually went with 7-8 mil semi-dries to do all the shooting because you could actually free dive with them.
Yeah.
You were calm. You could keep your balance. You know, the first dive was cold, and hopefully you drank enough water to replenish your wetsuit. As you went. some really cool photos. I mean, I've spent 30 years working with sharks, and this was an amazing. We kind of so this was kind of some footage of what it would look like when you're first getting in there. You can see how hazy the water is. That's that freshwater slick right on top. They'd come in. See that really pronounced keel? Just amazing specimens, and they are built 100% for speed. It's like the cheetah in the grasslands.
Are their tails just significantly different? Their tails really catch my eye.
They're really large per body. You know, they already have the size tail of a 20-foot shark, but it's on a 9-foot
It
shark.
looked like a tuna tail, too, looking down all
Very
the way.
forked.
Yeah, forked.
And then these guys have an amazing profile. So this is one that we shot from above.
Oh, wow.
Amazingly pointed nose that doesn't come out on the side shot.
No.
Did any of them seem aggressive?
Funny you should ask. Out of all the out of all the ones that we swam with, only 2 really showed. Whoops.
That was impressive.
Out of all the ones we swam with, only 2 really were aggressive. Mark had one, of course, the camera wasn't even powered on, that came up and mouth just made an immediate turn. But see this one? He was swimming along totally fine, and then just decided that he was going to turn on the afterburners and come right for our fins, which startles you a little bit. So apparently, maybe number 40 on the How to Die in Alaska was probably a salmon shark, although they have really tiny teeth. So. But again, keep in mind, we are, even with a Coast Guard helicopter, we're probably about 7 hours from a hospital. Yeah. So you have no idea how these animals are going to react. I'll just play that one more time because it's pretty cool to watch him
Turn and.
Ay, ay, ay. So he's just cruising along. And then on he goes. And something startled him. I don't even remember what we did, but just turned on the afterburners and right for our fins. And as soon as made that display, and then he was, okay, we're fine. So one of the main things we wanted to capture, which we failed to capture unfortunately, was this breaching behavior. We spent hours and days trying to get this breaching behavior. We would tow a line, we'd tow live baits, we'd tow flashers. We set up this camera on the shoreline on a gimbal, so you could just slide it, try to get the shark activity. But we were trying to get that breach, and we actually never did. So we're in the woods, we're on the shore, we're in the boats, and you wait. And you wait. And you wait. And that's 90% of what happens on a Shark Week shoot is that. So we ended up not getting the breach, but so then once that breach we weren't getting the breach events, and then we actually had the sharks move out. Just one day we probably had 14 spottings in a day. The next we didn't. The next day we didn't. The next day we didn't. One day we got one, and then for all intents and purposes they were gone. So we actually rented a helicopter and rented a seaplane. We were going to do a helicopter anyway to get kind of static scenic shots, just really charismatic stuff. And that turns out to be way number 50 to die in Alaska is by helicopter crash. So this is a tiny little helicopter. This is on the mountain above where the lodge is. This lodge is actually built on an old copper mine. The copper mine was sold by the U.S. to the Russians. To the Russians. The Russians sold it to the Chinese, and then the Chinese Communist government held on to this for about 50 years. And the family that bought this lodge was sending them letters every year for about 15 years that they wanted to buy this property. And then one day they got a piece of mail in the mail that said People's Republic of China, and it was basically an offer to buy this property. It was an old copper mine, but here you go, helicopter takes off. Oh good, Travis is in the helicopter, we're gonna have a great time. I hope you get some good footage.
Doesn't look good.
Oh crap.
No, it doesn't look good.
There goes Travis. Someone call 911. No, we can't call 911. This is really bad.
Is it windy?
Yeah, that looked good.
Yeah, it was bad. It was windy on the slope, so.
Because it didn't look like the trees were moving.
Oh, I don't know that I'd want to take off in it after that.
And now he goes. So, weight number 50 to die in Alaska averted.
Holy cow.
Wow.
So then we focused on the other wildlife in Alaska. The main thing being to tell the salmon story. Obviously, salmon drive everything in Alaska in the summertime. The shows are all about Alaskan gold. It's pink gold. This is where the money is. Everything from humans to every animal in that general vicinity is the epicenter. Is all these salmon making their runs. So salmon come back every year to their native stream. About 2 to 3 years later, to lay their eggs and die off, as we saw in glorious fashion a few slides ago. Without commercial fishing, this is actually probably one of the most sustainable fisheries in the world. Without fishing the salmon in Alaska, these rivers would choke with the volume of salmon that go into them. You saw what the carnage was on the ones that made it past all this. If all the salmon that were in the ocean were allowed to come back into those streams, they would be toxic, and the eggs that would hatch, they'd be polluted out. So this is one of the best, most sustainable fisheries in the world. So if you are a sustainable seafood person, wild caught, not farm raised, Pacific salmon are very good.
So there's always enough eggs laid because they get by.
Which is amazing because
they don't need regulation to
because the
watch.
birds are like crazy. The seagulls the smell of seagulls is worse than the dead fish, believe it or not.
There's no take limit then.
There is. I mean, it's very heavily regulated. They can go within a certain distance from a river mouth. If they encroach 1 foot past that river mouth or point, they're out. And DNR is flying seaplanes nonstop during season. They're also regulated as to which creeks they can go to, what gear they can use, what time they can start. I mean, they have a hard start time. You actually hear it called over the radio that you can commence fishing. It's very well regulated. So we wanted to film lots of salmon to complete the story. We at least had footage this time of salmon sharks, which was awesome. Mission accomplished. But as every story needs, we needed all the background cast of characters. So we went out and started filming salmon in every possible location. This is up a creek. Then we found this amazing, right at the base of that waterfall, which is really warm. It's like a sauna. I'm kidding. Is a really deep pool. It's freezing cold. It's awful. So that pond was probably about 46 degrees, or probably about 37 degrees, coming right out of the mountains. But there's a really deep pool
Keep the beer cold.
full of salmon. So as we were walking by this creek, this is what we see. These are the pink salmon making a run up the creek to get to that pool. So with the pink salmon and all the salmon, the males really change form as they get into that breeding time. Their back humps up, their teeth, their jaw gets really hooked. The females still look pretty normal, but the males get this horrific look to them because they're constantly sparring and fighting with each other over females to make their reds, which are their nests. So this is down when we get into the pool, freezing cold, but just an amazing place to shoot photos.
Salmon bites, beautiful.
No, they won't bite.
Look at the water churning on the top.
Yeah, so that's coming right off the waterfall, the churn off the top, and then this is Ben getting some shots. What I cut out of the shot, he's actually wearing the stupid rubber boots too to keep his booties protected. And then we're all in the water face down. This is awesome. We're snap, 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 shoot photos, just having the time of our life. Huh? What happened to this guy? Oh, crap. So we remembered our furry friends. So we decided to put one spotter up and make sure no more bears visited that pond. Luckily we were safe that day, but this is actually a pair of cubs up a similar creek running around. Again, one of those cases where mom actually didn't show up, but pretty really cool photo, two little cubs.
Yeah.
But this is, so we'd go way up these tidal creeks, snap photos, shoot video. Now the way we do this, we have these aluminum boats. We'd run them all the way up the creek during super high tide. Remember, 28-foot tide. So you can get really far inland. The problem is you can't get out. So 12 hours later, we're in bear country, hoping we're not besieged by bears in a zombie apocalypse. And then at 12 hours later, there's enough water that we can actually get out. So they were pretty dicey days, just hunkered down in a metal boat. Bears would be within reason sometimes they were way too close, but I mean, that's part of the adventure, right? So we had brown bears, lots of bald eagles, and then in our first year we'd actually found a stellar sea lion rookery. Now this was closer to Columbia Glacier, so Columbia Glacier is between Whittier and between Cordova, just west of Valdez. So it's one of the biggest glaciers in Alaska. And it feeds out into this one channel, and this is where the stellar sea lions are. Now the males, 2,500 pounds.
Holy cow.
Now, not as bad as dead salmon and seagull poop, but these guys smell terrible. So, of course, who do you want to go? Mark, get in there. So, obviously, Marine Mammal Protection Act is very important. The way the Marine Mammal Protection Act works is you can stay stationary, you have to keep a certain distance from them. If they come and engage you, you can film, you can get in the water with them, but they have to make that choice to come to you. So we would station off this beach, and they would come out like rats. They would just beeline it out to you. And the first time we did this, the first year in 2009, we were all wearing dry suits, and these guys bite, they yank at your fins, they're mouthing you, biting you, come racing up to your mask, and, hey, stop, and then you turn around, one's right here. They would love to mess with you, and they could tell that you were completely off your game because they almost laughed. So Mark is in the water getting mauled by a pack of stellar sea lions, and we hear slapping out in the distance, and it's two humpback whales tail slapping at each other. And so what do? I mean, there's only one thing you can do. Mark, hang on, man. We're gonna be right back. Seriously, dude. That was, I think, was the response, as only Mark could say. And so we left Mark to play with his sea lions, and we went out and filmed humpback whales slap around for a while. Then luckily went back and got Mark, and he was still in one piece, unfortunately.
Any orcas near all that?
Anyway. Thanks for the plan. So we had probably 3 or 4 different pods of orcas in the area. We're not sure exactly how many. We saw them a lot. This was probably my favorite day. There was a mom actually teaching her calf how to breach. Just, I mean, amazing animals. And we'd see them a lot. So this was a little calf trying to get airborne. But really, really cool. So again, we're Shark Week guys, right? Okay, there orcas. Hey Chris, go out on the paddleboard and see if you can get your ass kicked off.
How old is that water? He's barefoot.
Yeah, he's from South Africa, and he didn't wear a wetsuit, and he had his pajamas, sweatpants on, and there was actually a pod of killer whales coming his direction, and we wanted to see if they would slap him off the board and play with him.
And he was game.
And he didn't. Yeah.
So they were
fine.
marine mammal eaters, not salmon eaters.
They would have been salmon eaters.
They were fish eating orcas.
They were fish eating orcas. So good point. In the orca populations, pods are either fish eaters or mammal eaters. We were kind of hoping for Chris's sake that these were mammal eaters. And just left the sea lion buffet, but they didn't. So then one day we actually decided to take a trip to see how close we could get to Columbia Glacier, and this was just an amazing experience. I mean, that iceberg is twice the size of the Big Reef house. Well, again, luckily we were in these Stavy Craft aluminum boats. You'd hear ice just pound off the bottom of these things, and all I could think of is Leonardo DiCaprio and freezing to death and all kinds of great stuff. But we went really far up into the creek. But I mean, we were still probably 20 miles from the glacier itself. But we get deeper and deeper in. Sea otters, puffins, and then this was just massive. This is like the size of Divers Direct and 4 times as big. It's like 4 times as tall. I mean, just massive ice sheets. And they just had broken off like little pieces of dust off the glacier and had been floating down this creek. So then again, hey Mark, get in the water. Okay. So this is, believe it or not, a Florida Keys boy in the Alaskan waters in a wetsuit next to Columbia Glacier. And actually off camera, which you don't see, is a 30-foot bull orca that we were trying to get good footage of. And we never got good footage of it. Mark would see the white eye spot go by and then just black. And he could tell something was there, and he knew exactly what was going on. He wasn't about to get shot on camera. But really cool experience.
Was this one particular species of salmon? Were they all chums, or did
we
you
had
see
mostly
reds?
pinks.
So they were pinks but no reds.
We had pinks and silvers in our area. And it's also based on time of the year. Yeah. Certain regions, like this region, doesn't get a lot of the Chinooks. They get mostly pinks, silvers, and the cohos. Cohos ran later, but it's all seasonality on
Did you see any preference by the salmon sharks for like the orca are so picky for kings?
Yeah.
They'll pass chums to get a king.
We never saw a native predation because by the time we got there, the salmon sharks were still in the area, and then when we get in the water, they were not in feeding mode.
What time in July were you there?
We were there July like 8th to August 7th or something. Then one day coming back into Port Fidalgo, we had a gray whale breaching. We stopped when we saw the breaching behavior, and she came right over. This was probably an adolescent. Should not probably at this size be away from a mother. So we think it's probably an orphan calf that seemed to be at least in good health. It was not emaciated. It was fairly fat. But we think that's probably why she spent so much time with us. She'd rub on the bottom of the boat. She came over to check us out. And then this is, so she stayed with us for a while. And then, of course, Mark, get in there. We actually all got in with her. She was fantastic to swim with. But you can see Mark is working on way number 75 to die in Alaska, and that's beat to death by a whale tail. So you'll see she turns around, has no idea Mark's here. Oh boy, oh boy. Live another day in Alaska. Way to go. Absolutely amazing creature. The big boat went back, and me and Mark and Ben stayed in one of the little boats for probably about another hour and a half. We'd jump in and swim out to the middle of the fjord, and the boat was nowhere near us. We'd just float in mid-water, and she would make these rounds, and she'd be calling the whole time. She'd go as far as she could, and she'd come like a locomotive, as fast and as hard as she could, and she knew right when to dive. So she'd be looking at us straight in the face. She'd tilt her body just a bit. She would dive just enough so that she was just about an inch below our fins. And she did this like 5-6 times. back again, dive. Just really cool from a behavior standpoint. So then, probably the last 3 days of our trip there, we actually decided to use the scuba compressor that fills 1 tank a day to do some diving. So all of these sites had never been dove ever. So we've kind of been following the contour lines throughout our weeks there, looking for little outcroppings, areas where it'd come up to about 40 feet on the surface, then we'd lose it on the sounder. So these amazing shearbird float sharks were not, in both years, kind of why we went to this area, we heard stories from the commercial salmon fishermen of thousands of salmon sharks in these fjords any given summer. We were seeing dozens. Obviously the first year we saw none. We think that might have been weather related. Maybe it was seasonality. Maybe we were there too early. Maybe we were there too late. Maybe the salmon didn't run. We do know that the salmon run had really tapered off because of the amount of rain. The Alaska DNR we stayed in touch with after that year, and they said the salmon production that year was completely off. So it could have been any number of factors, but we do know from subsequent years after we went that the salmon shark populations are not what they were. Every salmon boat out there cursed the salmon sharks because they were everywhere, and they would see them and they would have to avoid them with their nets. So is that the tried and true? Is it commercial bycatch? Is that why there's no salmon sharks? To be perfectly honest with you, I think this is the one time, in sharks at least, that we have overfished a species by recreational fishing. So in Alaska, you can take 2 salmon sharks per day per person.
Oh.
These sharks live in 2 fjords and 1 island. We know that they are there for 3 weeks a year, and you tell me a group of people that want to do some dedicated shark fishing cannot do the damage that they can do doing this. 5 years, and you can easily wipe out the brood stock of a species that takes 20 years to reach maturity.
Do they eat them? What do they do?
You're looking at it. Take pictures.
That's it.
So they don't even do catch and release.
Nope. Whereas the commercial guys, again, we talked to many commercial fishermen, and everyone we talk to, yes, we get them from time to time in the nets. It's not as much as other species in other regions, because obviously these guys are only in Alaska for the summer. They work in other fisheries. They see way more bycatch. They said the salmon shark are fast enough and generally smart enough to get out of the way of the nets, and these guys can bolt. But when they do get this, they are mandated, and again, Alaska DNR is on them like white on rice to get these guys overboard fast. Alaska DNR does not tolerate shark bycatch with the salmon sharks. But oddly enough, they're fine with two killed a day by anybody that goes out there. But, so we really think, my personal opinion is that the recreational fishery has really wiped out the salmon sharks. And there's been a lot of push to reduce this catch until there's more study done on the full population numbers. And again, keep in mind, this is a sex-segregated community. These guys are not breeding at different times of the year. This is their one time a year to make a shot at it, to feed, to probably eat enough for 3 months worth of travel. So, one of the cool things that our show did, we stayed at the Ravencroft Lodge. So that lodge, up until the time that we went there, they were 100% a fishing and hunting lodge. He had tons of pictures of salmon sharks being posted in his lodge of people that he would take out salmon shark fishing. Halibut hanging from the wall, yellow-eye rockfish. You know what his summer season, from basically the end of June till the end of August, this is his new company. And it's diving and swimming with salmon sharks. He's converted his entire business model in the summer from a harvest to ecotourism. He is taking people out in wetsuits, he's taking people out in dry suits, people that aren't certified to dive, people that just snorkeling with salmon sharks. And it's been really cool because now he's gone from an end user driving the hunting and fishing to he's the one actually sending the petition as an Alaska state resident that you need to limit the salmon shark production, or hunt. So it's really cool to see what kind of a dedicated person who gets engaged from kind of the user level can really do. And it's really awesome. As I told you, Andy Murch kicked my butt on the best.
What changed his mind? Was it your...
And then he had seen us struggle to get in the water with a handful of them. And then he had seen, hey, these are animals that you can swim with. And there's a market there. There's photographers that are out there. And not only that, he sells more than this. Obviously, the the tours that go out there might be 2019. I'm going to show you some of our, these are what we call selects. So these are, when we come back from a trip, we pull the best footage together to send to the Discovery Channel, so they get an idea of what we're gonna give them. So this is Columbia Glacier. Now that's about 20-story building.
Is that with a drone?
No, that's that wobbly helicopter. So at least they made use of living that day. But we actually got the tail. Go figure, right? See the double keel? Oh, there it is. Two keels, and that's for speed. It's one of the males. They will spar with each other. And obviously, you put a camera in his face, he doesn't like it a whole lot. And that's what a creek looks like.
Yeah.
So you can imagine 10 times that amount if we didn't have commercial fishing for salmon. Look at that. It's like ants on your counter in August.
Yeah.
That's that 30-foot bull orca. We got him at the surface, but he didn't want to be. His dorsal fin is taller than I am, standing on the deck of the boat.
6 foot.
These are Mark's buddies, the sea lions. Tons of different jellies. We actually were going back through the footage and we watched in super slow motion a fish living in one of the lion's mane jellies as he was swimming along. So again, these are the tidal creeks. You know, you fill that 20 feet up and you're way up in that grass where you can run a boat. You get up there, you get dry docked, and then you're up there for the whole day playing with bears. They'll make these really fast runs to get through it, stretch, then they'll rest for a while. The really hard thing was trying to keep the camera from fogging up. You have this camera that's heating up inside a case and you don't get 37-degree water. It does not like that at all.
What'd you do with an anti-fog?
Time.
Just wipe them off?
Yeah, because we don't want to open it every time.
You had to wait for it,
fog on the
wait for it
inside.
to cool off.
Yeah, we put some desiccant in the inside of the housing.
Yeah.
The jibbing lights.
Yeah. So the video, I was shooting stills, and we had a couple guys shooting stills and a couple guys shooting video, but you had to use light. And if you didn't, you were
Shot.
It was so dark. I mean, that water's so dark and so deep, it would just eat the light. And you'd be in the middle of the day, and it felt like you were night time.
And it was clean enough they didn't get backscattered.
The surface was tough because it's that hazy. It didn't have a lot of particulate in it, but it was just tough shooting with the.
Do they ever go in open ocean, or they all the time in the fjords?
Once they leave here in the summertime, they're out in the open ocean on the Pacific, yeah. And then the males will go back over to Russia and Japan, and the females go down to Southern California. So this, I showed you, we were getting in near one of the trawling boats. We actually talked to one of the captains, and he allowed us to free dive under all the salmon nets. And as a fish guy, it hurts. I mean, it was like being in Finding Nemo. You just want to cut the net and let them all out. Probably would have gotten shot. Way number 99 to get killed in Alaska. let salmon fishermen's fish go.
They'll get tangled in that.
Yeah, we were worried about that. So.
Yeah.
But it was pretty gross. They pull that up and just, it's hard to watch that. Even though you know it's sustainable, it's pretty tough to watch. But this would be up one of those creeks. I mean, the volume of birds that would go for all those eggs was incredible. So then some gratuitous action shots to sell the show. We didn't show us shooting beer cans with a high-powered camera. So that's the female down there. You can tell not quite as distended. And then this actually, I mean, what better poster for Shark Week than mountains in the background, shark fins swimming around somebody.
Right. Like that one.
Did you ever encounter them in the water with salmon, or you just saw the shallow?
No, we would see them swimming by the reef. I mean, they're coming in from the ocean.
Yeah.
And so that we'd see them, if we were down on the walls, we'd see big school swims blast by. I mean, that looks like a cartoon. I mean, it's this huge body with all these weird fins. And,
Fish are friends.
yeah, it looks like something out of Finding Nemo. So those are some of the outtakes, and we actually made a 44-minute show. Discovery, though, we missed the breach, and then it wasn't a great white shark, so it didn't make prime time on Discovery Channel. So we ended up, our show got chopped up with a show about thresher sharks and mako sharks, I think it was, and it aired in 2015. This is available on iTunes or any other digital platform, but it's basically from Shark Week 2015. And the footage made it into a show called Ninja Sharks. And I'm sorry by 10 minutes, but thank you. And if you guys have any questions, Discovery. So the way Shark Week typically works is you make them a pitch, what you want to do. We formed our own production team, but we worked with Jeff Kerr, who'd done all the air jaws shows. We're actually deliver the finished episode. So.
You're going to Alaska.
I know you
God bless. Thank you very much.
December 7th, but December 8th, we will be here at Reef headquarters for the open house. And that will also be our holiday party for the year. So just so you know, normally we do a second Tuesday of the month holiday party at Reef, but we're going to have it on that Friday, December 8th this year. So please come out and join us. Ask me, and I'm going to do here 9. Oh! Oh!
You have a chance to win the raffle.
So here you go, bring your cup, bring your cup.
And you can buy them over in Reef House, or if you come to Reef Fest, we'll have plenty available.
Nancy, are you going to talk about where these pictures were shot, or how you?
These are Stephen Frink's photos. Are we going to?
I can briefly say a bit. So these are, like she said, these are all Stephen Frink photos. All of these photos are taken in the Keys except for one. Can anybody guess which one?
That one?
Yep.
No.
That is the one. So you
The
can
pillar-
see
the
pillar coral in the Keys,
Right.
but that
Not
photo
that
was
big.
actually taken in Cuba.
Oh,
And for
wow.
any of you who happen to know Stephen well, that's his daughter up in the top of the photo. So that's pretty cool. We are very, very excited about this new room, and you are all probably even more excited about these new chairs. Fantastic. So oh good. Now you can see that back part of that photo too. So yeah, so we are so excited about this room, and we hope that you will, come and join us for Reef Fest. Okay, we hope that you will come and join us for Reef Fest, but we also hope that you will encourage other people to come check out this space. It's a surprise for a lot of other people who haven't seen. I already did that.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I know, Kathy. This is going to be new for a lot of people to get to come see. So, we hope we encourage people to come look at it. And also, if you haven't taken the time, there's a lot of new exhibits in the Reef headquarters and also the Native Plants Trail outside. So we hope you all enjoy it. Just so you know, you're welcome to hang out, take a look for a few minutes in here. or in the building next door. The building next door, we were live streaming, like we said, from the camera, so there's a little bit of a lag time. So they are still.
I'm still talking.
So Andy is still talking next door. So you guys would like to go back and, you know, check out and get another bite to eat or something like that, just be aware that there might be still watching in there. But we hope you encourage you to, it's not, it's done. Okay, we're past the lag time, amazing. But, you know, start bringing your friends to Fish and Friends in 2018 because we have so much more space now to share the speakers with. We have 2 spaces, and so we really want to have more people at this event because we think it's pretty special.
Why did you run the front lights and the back lights out?
Good question. Why did we run the front lights? So we appreciate your advice on that. So when we live stream with no lights or with lights in the back but not the front, it's completely black up here, and you can see the image, but you can't see the speaker. Yeah, exactly. And actually, a lot of underwater photos, oddly, were very distorted on the camera when it was completely black. By having some light, it helps the photos that are related to there appear better, and then you can see the speaker. But we do appreciate your feedback. If any of you feel like it was pretty distracting to have these lights on in the front, you know, please.
Why couldn't you feed the projector feed in through and then have a separate feed through the speaker on the inside?
Sounds like
There you go.
That isn't hard.
So what are you
The same information that's right here, you get live for that. That makes me
you mean to have the video of the speaker? Oh, you mean have the video there?
Yeah,
getting an image of projected image is typically Marty.
Yes. So, we have talked about trying to have it like a ghost screen or a go-to webinar. So we're talking about also doing it like that. We're debating right now, is there a benefit to being able to see the speaker for people who are not there? So we're kind of debating right now because it's like a we talked about that. We tried a lot of things. We actually because we turned around all of these lights but one light. It's a bit of a game because we tried the lighting and stuff like that. Well, if you would like to come, we want to improve it so much. So they want to know if they want to pick up the chairs or leave them because they know you pick them up.
You leave the chairs as they are.
Okay, just leave them. We are looking for better ways. I can tell you this. We automatically decided. So earlier we were leaving just one of these panels on instead of 2. And if we had just one panel on and not 2,